Hello, this is the non-dual lectionary for the 13th Sunday after Pentecost, year A. We're continuing on with Matthew, so let's jump to it. It's Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 20. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. So, I mean, a couple things actually that I think are relatively straightforward here. And it's, I mean, when, so that, who do people say that I am? And all the answers are, for us, it'd be a little strange, right? Like some say you are these old people who are like reincarnated or something. But the key there, I think, is just, a lot of people just try to reference or refer to their experience of Jesus in uh, let's say normal terms. And what I mean by normal here is like, in terms of the separate self with like, you're one of these people or you're one of those people or you're like that, you're like this, with a concept, with something that they've previously familiar with. And when Peter answers, it's based on, and I mean Jesus just says this in the next sentence, right? But it's reflecting his experience. He's speaking from his true nature, recognizing Jesus's true nature. And I'm not saying Peter is necessarily an enlightened being here, or is living, manifesting out of true nature above all, but it's his what Jesus recognizes, I think, here is that it's Peter's true nature that recognizes Jesus's true nature and peeks through, shines through here so that he can give that answer, right? And that's what he says. Then, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. And flesh and blood here is your separate self, your normal operating system, your ego self, your psychological self hasn't come up with this concept, but your true nature has recognized this as a deep truth, right? Your experience is what's shining through here. So it's not the fact that Peter gives the quote right answer. It's not that so somebody else could say, "Oh, some say that you're the Messiah." And he wouldn't go, "Those people are right." That's not the point. The point isn't to have the right idea or concept. The point is that the answer reflects true experience, right? It reflects the experience and reflects true nature through the experience. And that's what Peter's answer is. And I think the other key to that understanding of this is in the very last sentence then, right? Where he says, um, he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Why would you do that, right? Well, the why I think is clear actually. It's because it's not the point that everybody else comes with the right concept. And telling somebody, "Hey, this is the right answer," doesn't mean anything. It's like a Zen koan, right? If the point is the experience of the koan that reveals the answer, right? That it's supposed to crack open and your answer could be different from somebody's answer, but still, quote, correct because it reflects deep truth. Um, so telling somebody else, "Hey, this is the right answer," is meaningless, right? So don't tell anybody, right? Let them come to their own experience on their own time, through their own experience, through their own, through their own true nature. And so, there's a lot else you could say about this one, but I wanted to point to those, couple little nuggets, I think, right? It's really just one core nugget here, right? Which is like, what's the so and what we can add on there, right, is if Jesus really is manifesting true nature, right? And so, that non-dual recognition is there in him and he's evoking it in others, then the point is in his mind, right, as a teacher to recognize when it is has been evoked, right? And so he recognizes that it's been evoked in Peter. And when Peter says it, Jesus just confirms, right? He's as a teacher pointing to it and saying, yes, that's what needs to come out. And also, hey, everybody, the point isn't now that that's the right answer, right? The point is to evoke something in someone else. And so all that middle part too about what you loosen, the point there, I think, is also that Peter, running the church, why does he run the church? Because Jesus sees the spark of like, oh, he could be a teacher potentially here, right? And the point though is that along the way, that others would also have that evoked within, and that's what, loosed on earth, loosed on heaven, all that means too. And so again, like what Jesus is really talking about here is not coming up with the right idea and not saying to people like, hey, as long as you get the right concepts, you get the right idea, you believe the right thing about me or about the church or anything like that, you've got it. It's it's to recognize what is in yourself and in him, but in him manifesting what is for all of us, and then to evoke that, right? To evoke what is at that like core recognition. Um, that still to this day, right? Like if we can, recognize that in ourselves, if we could recognize was what is now, we would, maybe not give the exact same answer. That's not the point, right? But that too can be evoked within us.